Okay, hello. Should I look at getting started then? Okay, today we're going back into our class on effective RSpec 3, effective testing in RSpec 3, and today we're going to be covering chapter 4, which is starting on the outside acceptance specs. So for those of you who aren't aware of the various types of testing, there are three vague camps. Let's just start with that. They go by subtly different names depending on which technology, which domain, which etc. you happen to be using, but they tend to be unit, integration, and acceptance testing. Unit testing is testing individual units. Think of them as Legos, you're only testing one brick. Integration is testing what happens when you put two of those bricks together. How do they work? How do they interact? Acceptance testing is to take that one step further and say, I want to bring together all of the integrations to do one thing, and I want to demonstrate that this works from end to end, which would be as soon as my user clicks on something on my site, I want to verify that that process actually works. And that's the vague thinking behind acceptance testing. So let's see what the chapter has for us. Okay. So it starts with some first steps. We're going to need some type of application we can actually work with here. So they start out by sketching up an expense tracker where, we can just write a few of these things up. We might have something like, and then let's skip over to code view real quick. Blow that up once more, just to make sure that's big enough. If this is ever not large enough for anyone, feel free to mention that and we can blow it up a little bit more. So what they're mentioning is that an HTTP request is going to go in, and then we're going to have routing through to Sinatra. Hitting up a database adapter. And what they're mentioning here is an acceptance test hits all of these concepts. Now, the book mentions, why are we not using Rails here? Because Rails is much more common. Well, Sinatra, as the book will say, is far more compact. And if we're trying to make a point here of how this works, it's going to be a little bit easier to work with instead of setting up everything else there. That said, if that is of interest later, we can definitely go back and do a special session on that, but let me know on that. Okay. So let's see what we got here. Go ahead and go into effective RSpec over here. And then we will say make a directory for the expense tracker. Go into that directory. Make sure the bundler is installed. The book mentions 1.15.3. We're on 2.4.5. You should not notice any tangible differences on there. If we do run into them, I guess we're going to be debugging live today. Okay, so we can bundle a init, which is going to put a gem file inside of our expense tracker. Then we're going to add a few gems inside of that gem file. Okay. So we have RSpec, and I'll explain what a few of these do in a second. So we have RSpec, which is our testing framework. CodeRay, which gives us a nice syntax highlighting. rack tests for HTTP middleware and requests. And of course, the book itself does lock these down a little bit, but let's see what we get on the latest versions. Okay, so we have rack 226. Let's see here, and rack test is at 202, so that's definitely gone through a few version changes. Sinatra is at 305, so that's gone through major. RSpec probably hasn't 3.12. Okay. Just for the sake of being safe here, since those versions have diverged enough, we'll go ahead and lock these down a little bit. We can't always go back and try and upgrade this, but especially rack test being 2 major versions ahead is worrying. Okay, so let's go and do that. Okay, so that downgraded all those. Yeah, one of the pesky parts about writing a book or doing a lot of this type of stuff is that code changes a lot faster than books do. So I don't blame them for locking these gems down, but if you want a fun exercise, try and upgrade those. Thankfully, I've learned better than trying to do that live on stream, even though I thought about it. Okay. Then we're going to go ahead and use the initialize command for RSpec. So that's going to give us a spec helper, a nice thing over here. So for me, I tend to like adding a few additional things into RSpec here, like documentation format, for instance. Okay, so we have our spec helper, which we won't worry too much about that. So let's see here. I'm going to get rid of some of this because it's noisy. And the book mentions to set rackenv to test up here. Let's see here. I'm not going to worry too much about that. And these, I mean, we could keep all the comments, but I'll let you all generate those. Okay, so I guess I'm going to start with. Let's see what we got over here. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and start out with our spec. And then we're going to say new folder, acceptance, and then inside there, expense tracker API spec. Okay, so we got that. Require rack tests. Require JSON for serialized data. Okay, I'm not sure why they're wrapping in the module. There's probably something in there. One of the problems with pattern matching is if I ever start typing in, it's going to treat that as a syntax and de-indent it. One of the bad things about that, I suppose, but let's see here. Coffee is equal to out. Let's say 575, right along with the book here. Yep, and if you ever want a data book, see what their data examples are. That said, the book is still very relevant even today. Man, I can't spell today. Okay, so we got that. Okay, so it's more of an access control for having easier access to that. Work probably fixes some of that, but I'm going to keep along with the book for now. The book does mention don't use floating point for currency, but for the sake of this example, it's not going to matter too terribly much. Big decimal or money gem would be preferable there, yeah. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so it's saying we're not going to design an entire API. We're just going to assume we're going to post to an expenses with some sort of payload. Okay. Quick look at HTTP API. We can skip that part. In a sense, that means that we have get, post, put, technically delete for requests, but we'll leave those alone. Okay, let's see what we have here. Looks like RSpec. Okay. Line 8. Unidentified app, and that's what the book expects. Okay. Let's go ahead and make an app just above the it line. So we have that. If we run that again, it should say uninitialized constant. Okay. Nice thing with more recent versions of Ruby is you'll notice that it underlines and says, I know what expense tracker is. I have no idea what API is, so please fix that. So it makes it a lot easier to hunt down what exactly is wrong with things. Okay. So expense tracker app API. New folder app. New file API. Okay. Require Sinatra base, require that. So we got those, and then in the expense tracker API spec, let's close some of these other ones. Don't need those. We should be able to see that spec. Well, that's fun. What do we got here? Require Sinatra base. Okay. We might have some debugging to do. Might have to edit. Yeah, Sinatra. No worries, no worries. Hash can't be coerced into a mastermind pattern. Let's check the gemfile.lock and just make sure that I haven't done anything weird with versions here. Okay, so Sinatra's on 200, yes. Okay, well, shall we go searching a little bit? Upgrade Sinatra to 210 or downgrade Ruby to 27. Okay, well, let's give that a try. Yeah, that's a problem. I'm running on a new Ruby version as well, so whoopsie. Okay, gem file. Sinatra 210. Worst case, I'll jump back down to Ruby 2.7. Okay, there we go. Hooray for Stack Overflow. Okay, shall we try continuing then? Let's see what we got. Right, I'm going to mention that over in the channel real quick. Point 1.0. 2.7x, just so we have a reference to that. Let's grab this links here, copy, paste, and there we go. That reference is in Discord now for future us. Okay, checking the response. So the book mentions we just passed a spec, sure, but it's not really doing anything, is it? So let's see here. Rack test provides last response method. Expect last response status to be 200. Okay, so that's probably going to fail. Says it's 400, which means does not exist. Got that. Okay. We add that to the API, give that another try, and that works. Okay. And feel free anytime to stop me with questions, clarifications, especially if you see me making a typo and think I'm about to do something silly, because I am not immune from those. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay. Let's see here. Record submitted expenses. We expect the response to be 200. Got that part. We're in filling a response body right now. So let's see. Okay, so we can run that again. It's going to fail because there is no actual body there. So for post expenses, we're going to return okay, so that gets to the failure of unexpected token at blank. Okay. Let's sequence ID 42, and if we run that again, that passes. Okay. So one fun thing to take a slight detour here. A couple things that I tend to like to do in spec helpers or other things like this. Jason, let's see if this still works. So I can put that there, put that there, put that there. I believe this will work. If not, well, yep, okay. Got that. But yeah, if you're doing a bunch of JSON.parse, last response body, sometimes put in helpers for those type of things because that ends up getting tedious. So we'll go and put that back. I'm not going to try and change too much of how the book's behaving. Okay, so querying the data. Pretty nice to be able to retrieve them, allow users to fetch that. Let's see here, post expense. It's going to be in that. Okay. Post expense takes an expense. Yeah, I'm going to stop myself. I half thought about putting the JSON method back in there, but every time I do that, I end up having to fix it later. Yeah, let's just grab this. Change that over there. I mean, I get that it's an implied hash, but I'm not exactly sure about that. Let's see here. Where exactly does it want me to put that? Okay. Oh, right, there's merge at the end of that. So we got those. Okay. Fine, let's keep rolling with the book then. So we got a few more expenses there. Tenth and 11th for that one. choose 95.20. And this would be 15.25. Are they wanting? Okay, so I guess that we're doing some different stuff over here. Okay. Last response be 200. I'm still really tempted to put that JSON helper back in there. Maybe we'll go back on a refactoring trip here in a second. Okay. So if we ran that, it's going to fail. Because 404, it doesn't have a response for that. Okay. We'll go back over to our API. And that's generating an empty response, so that'll take care of the 404, but it won't actually have the data. So it'll say it expects the data that we have in there, but we don't quite have that. Okay. So saving and loading expenses. So we'll go back here. Put a pending in there. Need to persist expenses. Okay. So it still tells us our results, but says we don't have the behavior implemented quite yet. Okay, let's see here. Expense tracking config.ru. RU standing for rack up. Let's see here. Run that new expense tracker. Okay. What do we got here? Oh, right. Right. So Ruby 3.x plus, you do need to actually put a gem file in there. A web server. So let's put WebBreak in there. Bundle. If I was smart, I'd downgrade to Ruby 2.7. Port 9292. Okay, so that route does not exist. Got it. We can open up a new one, post that curl request that this was mentioning, which is going to give us back an empty array. Okay. And that looks like the end of the chapter. So now then, let's go on a little bit of refactoring real quick. So with expense tracker over here, let's start with personally, I prefer symbolized names here. So what we can say is expect JSON to include expense ID, expense ID. Actually, let's do this. If we make it into a let instead, then that's not going to rerun multiple times when we run that example. So that goes there. That goes there. Go back to RSpec class. No, wrong one. Ah. There it is. So we got that. Got that. I mean, for me, I kind of prefer symbol keys, but again, this is more a matter of preference and it's a matter of anything else. If you're ever wondering what type of weird magical keyboard shortcuts I'm using, feel free to ask on those as well. So that's still going to be pending. Okay, so we have most of that. One nice thing, and the reason why I would still symbolize keys is because if you do something like that, you could also say, I'm not sure if this will work exactly, but we'll see. JSON in. It'd be nice if this worked, but I kind of doubt it. That's probably going to crash though. Okay, so it works with 2 parentheses. That'll fail. Okay. Haha. So this is pattern matching, which is Ruby 3. Ruby 2.7 plus. I kind of like this syntax a little bit more. The reason why I have 2 parentheses around it is because with the in keyword, it's not sure if this is a hash parameter, if that's something else. So fair enough. So we could do that. Then we could also say something along the lines of down here. Should have coffee and zoo. So we could do that, but now that one, let's say, is probably going to make more sense as this. So if we put that back, that should work. Yep. Okay. So we do have a little bit of time for questions if anyone has anything they're curious about or wants to work with. Config.ru stands for rackup as a reference, and I believe they're going to be getting into a little bit more as we go through the book here. That should still work. Yep. Okay. So do we have any questions or anything people are curious about? Okay. Well, if not, we can go ahead and wrap this class up for today. Thank you for coming out. And as always, feel free to ask any questions or clarifications over in our Discord channel, and we'll get back to you as quick as we can on that. There are a few minor differences. I would probably recommend folks use Ruby 2.7 instead of Ruby 3.x because there are a few little things that are different enough to potentially cause issues for folks, but not really that bad. So if you want to explore and go on a little bit of adventure, by all means, go ahead and do that. But you might have somewhat of a more difficult experience. Anyway, with that said, thank you so much for coming out and have a great day.